रोशनी का कारवां।
This podcast is brought to you by Barrier Break Solutions Private Limited and Score Foundation.
ये है रोशनी, रोशनी, रोशनी का कारवां, रोशनी। Eyeway, ये है रोशनी का कारवां।
Hi, my name is George Abraham and welcome to Eyeway Conversations. My guest today is Deepthi Bopaiah, the CEO of GoSports Foundation. So Deepthi, tell me, how did you get interested in sports and your involvement with sports?
George, I come from this place called Coorg, and the two things we're very, very good at is really in sport, or we are part of the forces. And we've grown up seeing a lot of my family members in sport, and or they join the forces. So it's something that we do day in and day out from a very, very young age. My parents introduced sport to my sister and me very early on, and so grateful that they did, because there was this constant interest to learn the sport and learn the lessons from sport and enjoy sport as well. So growing up, we played a lot of tennis, and school also had a lot of different sports. And eventually we took up tennis and basketball, played up to the state level and university level. And then, like I say, life happened. But till today, I think a lot of the life lessons, in terms of just showing up every day, not giving up, working in a team, accepting failure, all of these things I think come a lot more easier because of sport, and it's played a very, very important role in my life.
So did you get into GoSports Foundation straight out of college, or you had something in between?
No, so when I decided to stop pursuing my sport, I was trying to figure out what to do. So I went on to do my MBA in Symbiosis, Pune. And, once you get into a B school, the only thing you want is a great placement. And you want to get placed on day zero. So and banks are typically the ones who give you a great package, and they're usually there on day zero. And I got picked into HSBC Bank at that point of time. And I was with the bank for 6 years. I had an incredible 6 years, was in 3 different roles, learned a lot in the bank. But, I would have these moments every few months and conversations with my bosses saying, I really don't know what I'm doing. I'm not really impacting too many people's life, and I really want to do something larger and bigger. And, I started exploring, and that's when I came across GoSports. During my research and through common friends and family, I got introduced to our trustees. And after hearing the vision in terms of what they had for GoSports, I was very, very excited and intrigued. And it was a difficult decision at that point of time. I was doing fairly well in the bank. I was one of the youngest vice presidents. We have fancy designations in the bank, but to give that very lucrative career up and get into a completely unknown space a decade ago was a big risk. But I'm so glad I took that risk, because it's been absolutely worth it. So that's when GoSports happened to me in 2012.
If you know of anyone with vision impairment who needs guidance on living life with blindness, please share the Eyeway National Toll-Free Helpline number 1-800-5320-469. The number is 1-800-5320-469.
Yeah, before we go any further, can you tell us, you talked about the vision of GoSports. What exactly is the vision of GoSports, and what actually excited you?
So I think every 4 years as a country, we wake up and talk about, we don't have medalists, we're not good in sport. I don't think we have the ability, or our body type is not, like that. people with disabilities cannot play sport. There were so many myths and narratives around the why we can't do it in sport. And when I met our trustees, I think the hope in terms of, and the belief that as a nation we have immense talent, but what is really missing is the customized and systematic approach to nurture and support talent. And I think that's really the part that excited me. And at GoSports, what we really believe is that for in order to get medals, you have to first increase the base of Olympians and Paralympians, and the medals will be an outcome. But broadly, from a social impact space, I think what we're really excited about is the pursuit of excellence, George, because these young athletes, are making so many different sacrifices to get to their best level in sport. Our attempt is to smoothen the process, to support them, to guide them, to get them the necessary resources, both financial and non-financial, and really get them to their best potential, which could be an Asian Games, could be a Commonwealth, and ultimately the Olympics and the Paralympics. So our attempt is really enabling sports excellence. And one of the things, which we believe at the foundation, and this is something which is there in all our collateral, is we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. So we really believe that if you want to pursue excellence, it's a difficult route, it's a difficult path, but if you have the right team, you can make it. And eventually, we believe each of these athletes who go on to do well eventually are role models for the country, for the youngsters, for everybody else. And they create so much hope. I mean, in a pandemic year, the entire nation came together cheering for our Olympians and Paralympians in 2021. So it was really exciting to see the power of sport and how it brings people together. So that's what we really do at GoSports, George.
That sounds very interesting. And the whole idea of making excellence a habit is an interesting concept. So conceptually, it sounds fascinating. What is the kind of strategy or process that you follow in terms of executing this vision into reality?
Yeah. So we are 13 years old. We've just become a teenager. Yeah. And our initial years, were really about going to individuals and, doing very small sort of interventions for athletes, buying them shoes or getting them equipment and really trying to continue to play sport. But as we grew, we realized that we will create a proper structure, and we started something called as the GoSports scholarships, where athletes can apply for our scholarships and they go through a process of shortlist, and then we decide who we can work with depending on our budget, depending on what our understanding of that sport based on the experts we have access to domestically and internationally. And then we started our scholarships in 2012 with about 20 athletes when we started. And that has grown. And today we give out scholarships to 135 athletes. And, it's across 6 athlete development programs. We are very, very fortunate to have Rahul Dravid and Pullela Gopichand on our advisory board. Abhinav Bindra was also there till 2017, till he started his own foundation. So we've really been guided by these legends in terms of what a young athlete pathway should look like and what is the support system they need. So it's been quite fascinating for us to really go beyond basic money, but really get into high performance, get into biomechanics, get into sleep cycles, get into monitoring, all kinds of aspects regards to blood works, nutrition, and really give them what a world-class athlete gets, and then see whether our athletes can make it or not. And it's really heartening to see the number of athletes from India who've gone on to do so well at an international level. And I think it's a proof of concept every time that happens, that we're on the right track, and with support, the right guidance and the right team, athletes can get to the highest level in sport. So that's how we run our projects and execute it. At a team level, we have about 20 members currently in our team. we have a partnerships team who's constantly attempting to raise funds and manage our existing donors, and we have our program team who's the heart of the foundation as well, along with the athletes, in terms of managing these athletes. And we have athlete managers who work with each of our athletes. So it's a team, it's a structure that we've built over a period of time. And we've seen the success to the extent that even the sports ministry has had started a scheme called as the Target Olympic Podium Scheme, the TOP scheme. And the entire model of the structure, of athlete managers, of relationship managers, and how monitoring happens was all very similar to what we did at GoSports. So it was really nice. And for a social impact organization, we will not be able to give the scale it requires. And when the government adopts your processes or systems, it's probably one of the most heartening feelings, because you've got something right which can benefit the larger audience.
Deepthi, could you tell us about some of the success stories of GoSports? You're 13 years old. I'm sure there are stars now that you can talk about.
Yes. At the Olympics, we've obviously had about 12 of our athletes who went for the Tokyo Olympics. We had a lot of India's firsts that happened. We had India's first fencer, Bhavani Devi, who went in. We had India's first female sailor, Netra, who went in this time. We had we had the badminton players, three boys, Sai Praneeth, Chirag Satvik, who were part of the team, Anjum, who was a shooter, Kidambi Srikanth, who very recently won the World Championship medal as well. All of this has taken many, many, many years for us. In fact, Kidambi Srikanth, it's a beautiful story because when we picked him up, he was somewhere in the top 200 in the world. And all he wanted was, I want to play competitions and I know I can get to the top of this game. And 6 years later, he was world number one. And it was a really exciting journey, both for him and the foundation, to really try and understand what it takes to make a world-class athlete and to become world number one. And along with that, we also work with athletes with disability. So we had a lot of the, at the Rio Paralympics, which I was very fortunate to be there on ground. Out of the 19 athletes who qualified, 11 were supported by the foundation. 3 of the medalists, which include Deepa Malik, Devendra Jhajaria, and Varun Bhati, were all supported by the foundation. This time, we had 21 athletes out of the 54 who were supported through our Para Champions program. And George, you also have played a very crucial role in that program by helping us shortlist and select our athletes. So thank you very much. This time we actually had the 4 gold medalists from that cohort. So it has been really gratifying and heartening and satisfying in every possible way.
Deepthi, I'd be kind of interested in knowing, and I'm sure the audience also would be interested in knowing, athletes with disability are not really talked about or thought of. And that was the case till very recent. What actually was the thinking or the inspiration behind GoSports Foundation actually looking at athletes with disability?
So as an organization, we've always thought about inclusivity. So even when we started in 2008, we looked at both athletes with disability as well as able-bodied athletes. So right from the start, we have always worked with athletes. And for us, in our mind, it has always been, the Paralympics is the parallel of the Olympics, which just happens at the same place 3 weeks later with some modifications for infrastructure accessibility. So why can't Indians do well at the global stage at the Olympics and Paralympics? And when we started, I think a lot of the medals that happened till 2012 was all despite the system. There was no real structure per se in the Paralympic space. And our attempt was to really change that narrative, because athletes with disabilities was always looked at as more from a sympathy standpoint rather than, we must do this for them, rather than giving them a platform to excel. So I think for us, it was thanks to our board members, our steering committee members, our trustees, we were able to take that call, and we actually conceptualized something called as a Para Champions program. None of what we do, George, is possible without funding and finding partners who believe in our vision. So very, very grateful to our partners like Aditya Birla Capital, IndusInd Bank, Sony Pictures, who actually came on board at the very start of these concepts and believed in nation building through sport. And that's really been a game changer for us, because we were able to really take our concepts and showcase it to these, corporates, get the leadership team to buy into our idea, and then support these programs. And I think the best thing that happened for Indian sport was CSR, the corporate social responsibility mandate. India is one of the first countries in the world where it is mandated to actually spend the CSR funding. And also the fact that sport got included under one of the categories under Schedule 7, which is training towards Olympic and Paralympic and rural sports. And when that happened, there was no reason not to go all out and create a separate project for athletes with disabilities, really understand their challenges, pick up the talent. And in an 8-year cycle, we've already seen the base triple, not just double, but triple. And I'm sure if the momentum can continue at Paris, which is 3 years away, we were 54 athletes at the Paralympics who qualified. We may have close to 80 to 100 if all goes well, because that's the kind of momentum, that's the kind of awareness that has been created. So when we look back, medal is one of our outcomes. We're not chasing the medals. We're chasing the narratives. We're chasing all the possible things that people are saying this is not possible. And we're really fighting those battles. And once it gets to a stage, I think today the Paralympic Committee of India, the Sports Authority of India, the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, everybody is working together. All of us, the federations, we're all working together. And a large part of the success at Tokyo has been because of collaboration and keeping the athlete at the center of all our decisions, irrespective of whether they're an able-bodied athlete or an athlete with disability. So I think that change in perception has been really special to see.
Disability is a diverse space. And, today, according to the government of India, there are 21 disabilities that have been recognized. Till very recently, till 2016, in fact, people talked about 7 disabilities. So when you actually look at identifying and promoting athletes with disability, each disability requires a certain amount of specialization. So where do you get this specialized inputs to actually facilitate athletes with disability to go on further in their quest for glory?
So our initial years were really difficult in terms of finding the right experts, the physios, the trainers, really trying to see how can we work with athletes with disability. We are very, very fortunate to have John Gloster, who's our head of sports science, somebody who's worked with the Indian cricket team, who has international exposure, experience, has worked with athletes with disability in the past, who helped us create an entire ecosystem in terms of, how we should be working with athletes, what are the guidelines we need to follow, what are the elements that we can actually participate in. And if you look at the Paralympics, they're very clear on the kind of events that they have. And we have the Paralympic Committee of India registered, who is the national body to take these decisions on the events. And broadly, they take part in certain categories of para sports. So whether it is powerlifting, athletics, para badminton, and para shooting, right? So these are their broad categories under which the events that we can take part in. So we followed the similar metrics, and then we went about doing it from there. So it was interesting initially to choose the sports and get the sports, but what we've really seen is all the role models that have come out, all the previous medalists or athletes who've qualified, I think they have created such a huge interest from so many people with disabilities who now believe that they can also create an identity for themselves. They can also be healthy. They can also push their limits, and they can get to the best in the world. So I think for us, it has been a long journey. We're still learning. We're still trying to explore all the possibilities that is available globally. How do you bring in global expertise back into India? And I think a lot of partnerships are, key for something like this to really get to the next level.
Deepthi, as you know, we as an organization at GoSports Foundation focus on people who are visually impaired. Uh, Tell me a little bit about the kind of work that you've done with athletes who are blind.
So we currently work with about 4 athletes with disabilities. They have guide. 3 of them have guide runners. So we have to work with them as a team. The guide runner has to match, and it's like a relationship, right? They both have to work together. They both have to be talking to each other. You have someone like an Ankur Dama, who's also, supported in his early days from your organization as well. He went on to the Asian Games. He's a medalist there. He went in for the Rio Paralympics. It was heartbreaking because his guide runner fell down over there, and that was one of my most heartbreaking moments in sport that I have seen. Because for that 3-4 seconds, when you lose your guide runner, the emotions that were probably going through in his mind and the guide runner's mind, but they completed the race. But that particular moment. So there's so many nuances to be learned in terms of how to run, what to run, the sounds that are allowed, what kind of equipment that needs to be used, how do they train. The training process is quite an interesting process. How do you keep them fit? A lot of listening, a lot of different conversations need to happen, their nutrition, their mental conditioning. So there's a whole range of elements that we as an organization add in to take them to the next level in their performance. So for us, yes, each and every athlete amongst the 135 have individual curated programs. So there is no generic program for everyone. So because even if you're talking about a runner, their body type, their requirements, their strength, their nutrition program is very different from another athlete who's also a runner, even if in the same category, but needs different set of interventions. So we're still learning on the job, long way to go.
It might be interesting for you to kind of on this show talk about various events globally that visually impaired athletes actually participate in.
Right now, athletics is the number one event, but if you look at in athletics, there are different types of events over there that athletes can participate in. But like I said, we are at a very, very even globally, the number of visually impaired athletes are very low. And then we were also trying to understand why is this low. The reason that came out is that socially, the visually impaired individuals have a lot more opportunities than other people with disability. I don't know if that data is right or accurate, but it was interesting to see that a lot of people who are visually impaired actually have gone on to study, got educated, and then gone on to do other things. But if you look at athletics, for example, there are categories like T11, T12, T13, F11, F12, F13. You have when you run with a guide, it's called T11. There are cycling events. There's equestrian. There's football 5-a-side. There's goalball, there's judo, there's rowing, there is sailing, there is swimming. Swimming is also there. So there are all these categories, and it's growing day in, and every year we are seeing a lot more people come in. But as of now, the visually impaired participation from India is pretty low, and it's an interesting point that you've brought out. Definitely something to work together and see how we can introduce more visually impaired athletes into the events, and get them into understanding what it takes.
To support our work with the blind and visually impaired, you can visit the donate page on our website www.scorefoundation.org.in. Please note www.scorefoundation.org.in.
Finally, I'd just like to ask you, there would be a number of people with vision impairment who probably would be listening to this program. Also, organizations working with people who are visually impaired who probably would listen to this chat.
Yeah.
I would like you to share as to how do you actually access athletes for your programs, number one. Number two, if there are athletes who want to become part of your program, how do they actually get in touch?
So we actually have a scholarship process. So athletes apply for a scholarship. We just closed our application process about 2 weeks ago. We have actually received about 200 odd applications just from athletes with disabilities. We now need to break down and see what are the different types of disability applications that we've received. But it was very interesting and heartening to see that number go up for us. So anybody who's interested, who wants to participate, who wants to take part in these events, there is a registration that needs to be done with the Paralympic Committee of India. So you need to first get registered, and then there is a classification that has to happen. Now, unfortunately, that classification does not happen in India. We don't have our own classifiers. So for you to get classified, you may need to travel for an event internationally and get your classification. That is based on the medical testing and assessments. They will give you that a category that you fall under and where you need to participate in. So that is the first step that anybody with disability will have to take. You have to first get registered under the Paralympic Committee of India, and then you have to get your classification done. So when these two things happen, post that you can apply for a scholarship, because that is a very bare requisite for you to start participating at even state level and then national level events. So once you're able to do that, definitely you can apply for a scholarship. And even if you are not sure about the process, you want to know how to go about it, we're more than happy. Our entire team would be more than happy to guide anybody who's interested and who wants access or connections or networks to get this whole process done for them. We've done it for many athletes in the past, and we're more than happy to help anybody else who wants to explore the world of sport.
So is there any email ID or telephone number or a website where people could connect with you?
Yeah, so our website is www.GoSports.in. Over there also we have our scholarship application link. You can go directly there and apply. You can also write to us at foundation@gosports.in, and you can also write to me, Deepthi Bopaiah at GoSports.in. So you can reach out to any of us, and we'd be more than happy to see how we can smoothen this process for you to get into sport and eventually do really well in sport.
Lovely. Wonderful speaking with you, Deepthi. And I think what GoSports Foundation is doing is something which a lot of people with disability would have actually dreamt of maybe a couple of decades ago. Yes. So take care and keep the good work going.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Lovely speaking to you.
Eyeway, ye hai roshni ka karwan.
This podcast was brought to you by Barrier Break Solutions Private Limited and Score Foundation.
Ye hai roshni ka karwan, roshni. Eyeway, ye hai roshni ka karwan.